This black janitor's hands made the white professor envious. The professor handed him a pair of surgical forceps, and the black man easily picked up a test tube. The professor then asked him to try with his left hand. Unexpectedly, both of his hands were perfectly steady, and he even picked up a bottle stopper with ease. With flawless control of both hands, the professor was stunned. Even he himself had needed 10 years of practice to be this steady, yet this janitor did it effortlessly, and it was only his first day on the job. He was born to be a surgeon. But the test wasn't over yet. The professor asked him what the instruments on the table were called. The man answered every question correctly. His flawless performance made the professor very curious. Thomas's childhood dream had been to become a doctor. Now he was working everywhere he could to save money for college. Talent and hard work had brought him his first success. The professor promoted him to assistant, and began teaching him medical knowledge. He studied harder than ever, and within just a few days, he could already calculate anesthesia ratios with skill. One day, the professor had Thomas perform surgery on a dog. Though it was his first time operating, Thomas did it cleanly and efficiently. The professor asked him to find the pulmonary artery, and then damage it to induce shock. At the time, everyone focused only on stopping bleeding, but the professor proposed giving blood transfusions to stabilize blood pressure. When blood flowed into the dog's body, the falling blood pressure indeed rose again. Then the professor asked where the recorder was, but Thomas had no idea what that was. The professor cursed at him in anger, because he needs a recorder to record the process. He kept insulting Thomas, so Thomas took off his coat, and walked out of the institute. But then the professor suddenly discovered a notebook, where the entire process was recorded neatly in detail, far more useful than a recorder. He grabbed Thomas's coat and ran after him, apologizing and begging him to stay. This treatment method went on to save hundreds of thousands of soldiers. The professor gained great fame, becoming a celebrated figure of the time. At the celebration banquet that night, Thomas could only enter as a waiter. The professor never publicly acknowledged his contribution. Thomas's wife couldn't understand, especially since he earned so little and endured such unfair treatment. But Thomas was deeply grateful for the chance the professor had once given him. He comforted his wife, saying everything would get better. A few years later, the professor was hired by one of the world's top medical schools as the head of surgery. At his request, Thomas was also hired. Yet Thomas still faced racial discrimination. He was even thrown out by a security guard. Luckily, the professor defended him. While setting up the new lab, a white supervisor even mistook him for a tea-boy, and told him to go buy coffee. But there, Thomas saw a group of unusual children, all forced to sit still because of heart problems. And soon, Thomas would be able to show his extraordinary talent. After countless experiments, Thomas came up with a bold idea. He could redirect blood from other arteries into the pulmonary artery, allowing more blood supply to the lungs. With this method, they successfully completed the very first heart surgery, saving countless patients with heart disease. Years later, he was awarded an honorary doctorate, and both he and the professor received honorary portraits. He became the first black man ever to be granted such recognition. With a lifetime of effort, he broke through all prejudice,